As Liz said, my name is Ashley. I'm a product marketing manager here at Nerdio. And I also have Frank here. And Frank is the manager of our brand new MSP customer success team. Hi, Frank. How are you?
Hey Ashley, how are you doing today?
Good, good. Okay, I know we've done this before. This is the third episode, but we do have some new people here. Can you tell us a little bit about the customer success team?
I sure can. I can't believe we're on episode 3 of this series. So for all of you who may be here for the first time, right? Go in and access our previous recordings. You can get signed up to our partnered portal, and that's partnered.getnerdio.com. And go ahead and get signed up, and you'll find the resources page with a content library, and you can watch webinars series 1 and 2, episode 1 and 2 of our series Beyond the Basics. And obviously this will be uploaded, as Liz said, as well. So feel free to do that if you're joining for the first time today, and we're so excited to have you. That said, I'd like to introduce everyone to the customer success team here on the MSP side of the business. So since this is an MSP-focused webinar, we're going to go over the Nerdio Manager for MSP tool and a couple of key features of that tool. But before we do that, just wanted to say a quick word about our customer success team. So we've recently established a team here on the MSP side of the business that is specifically focused on working with existing partners. Hey, Adam, by the way, saw that. So we're going to be working with existing partners of Nerdio. We have a bunch of longstanding partners who've been with us from the beginning for years now. And we really want to make sure we're going deeper with those partners. And as part of the initiative, we kind of built out even this webinar series to help our existing partners to get a little bit more love from our team. And so myself, I head up that team. I work with a bunch of partners here as well myself. But yeah, our team has been built out. We're ready to engage, if we haven't already, with our existing partner base. So if you've not spoken with your customer success manager, feel free to reach out to us. We'll get you in touch with that person, and we'll make sure you're getting the love you certainly deserve and require from our team here.
Awesome. That was a great pitch, Frank. If you guys aren't leveraging that team, do so now, because, Frank's pitch was awesome. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the key features that Frank is going to demo for you. I do have to tell you guys what the features are and why you should care about them before we get to the demo, but I promise we will get to a demo. So let's get started. The key features that we will cover today, let's start with AVD and Azure Files Auto-Scaling. So what is auto-scaling, guys? Auto-scaling within Nerdio Manager specifically is a capability that is designed to help manage and optimize resources in your Azure environment. So through auto-scaling, Nerdio Manager can dynamically adjust the number of virtual machines or resources up or down based on parameters that you have predefined. And some of these parameters are user demand or schedule. So why should you as an MSP care about this feature? The main thing I would say is cost efficiency, right? It has an ability to dynamically adjust those resources so you don't pay for what you don't use. And this intelligent auto scaling allows you to scale down during off-peak hours, significantly reducing your costs. And it's not just about saving specifically, it's also about optimizing and your client's cloud expenditure. So you can save yourself and your clients money. Reason number 2 is enhanced performance. Your clients expect consistent and high quality access to their applications. So auto scaling ensures that those resources are matched to your customer's demand. And this guarantees performance when needed without over provisioning. So without adding resources and stuff that you don't need that costs more. And on the operational front, the efficient management of cloud resources has always been a task that has demanded attention and time, and lots of it. So with this operational efficiency, that is the cornerstone of this feature, it essentially translates to reduced manual oversight. So once again, this is what we said last episode. It frees up your time to concentrate on what truly matters, other parts of your business. You're not having to manage this one thing and take up all of your time. So that is what I have for AVD Azure Files and Auto-Scaling. Did you want to add anything to that, Frank?
Yeah, just real quick, right? And we certainly want to save plenty of time for the demo. But if you've been a partner with Nerdio for any length of time, I think it's probably safe to say you've heard of our proprietary auto-scaling technology, right? It's probably one of the main reasons maybe you even came to talk to us to begin with. But I think, we continue to enhance the tool set. And so you'll even see some new things like rolling drain mode today that are just recently come out. So I really want to, I feel like, reintroduce some of the basics of that, and even bring to light some of the newer features that we're going to go through. So looking forward to giving that demo shortly.
Awesome. Okay, guys, I'm going to move to feature number 2, Unified Application Management, or UAM, as we will refer to it. And this is essentially a feature that streamlines the management of apps across your AVD environments. So it allows you guys to deploy, manage, and maintain applications for your environments using a single centralized platform. And the importance of UAM for you guys, for the MSPs, lies in its ability to simplify complex processes. So what are some of those things? So centralized application management. This means that MSPs can manage all of their clients' applications in one place, which then in turn reduces the complexity of handling multiple disparate systems and environments. The second thing is efficiency and time savings. Once again, repetitive tasks related to app deployment and updates can now be automated. And this allows you to focus on more strategic initiatives. And then another thing that's really interesting is enhanced security and compliance. So with UAM, you guys, the MSPs, can ensure that all client applications are consistently managed and in compliance with whatever security policies that they have. And this in turn makes it easier to maintain a secure and compliant cloud management environment. And this is super important in industries such as finance, healthcare, even education. That's all I have for UAM. Frank, did you want to add a little color to that, or did I cover it all?
Yeah, no, you did a great job covering it. I would say like UAM to me is one of the, I would say, newer features that came out this year. So maybe a lot of folks here haven't quite been exposed to it yet. And I'm super excited to show you kind of where it can help address a lot of gaps. For me, coming from an MSP before I came here to Nerdio, like one of the biggest problems that I couldn't really solve for was the ability to patch third-party applications. I think we're all really good at maybe, doing Windows updates and keeping, the devices secure from that perspective. But really where the gaps exist in most cases are going to be those third-party apps and the zero-day vulnerabilities that can affect those. So with the UAM product here that's come out, we're going to help you to bridge that gap and solve for some of that.
Awesome. Okay, guys. The third feature that we're going to touch on today is server management. So server management within Nerdio Manager involves the overseeing and maintaining of virtual servers and resources in a cloud environment. That's the dictionary.com definition, right? And this feature we designed it to simplify and automate various aspects of server and infrastructure management for MSPs. So why should you guys care about this? First of all, scalability. So you can easily scale resources up or down, scale resources up or down based on your client needs. And this ensures the optimal use of resources, once again, without over provisioning. Another thing is cost savings. So by optimizing resource usage and automating cost management, you can reduce your operational costs and offer more competitive pricing to your clients. And the next thing is client satisfaction. You know, we all want to make our clients happy, right? So if you can offer them reliable and well-managed servers, that then in turn will lead to fewer disruptions and then in turn higher client satisfaction. And this allows you to foster long-term relationships. So I think with this time around, with these features, the whole idea is about efficiency and optimization. That's what we're hammering on for this round. Did you want to add anything, Frank?
No, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Great job, Ashley. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so now that you guys have heard me, blah, 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 yammer on about these features, I know you guys are waiting to see Frank demo these features. So take it away, Frank. Take it away.
Sounds good. Let me know, Ashley, if you can see my screen here.
I can see it.
All right, perfect. So first thing I want to focus on today, and hopefully everyone for the most part, has seen the Nerdio Manager for MSP console, since again, we're really have a targeted audience here of existing partners. But if you're new to Nerdio, this is really what the Nerdio Manager for MSP portal looks like. At the very top, upper left-hand side, we're in our sales demo here internally here at Nerdio. But what I'm going to do first, I'm going to go in and I'm going to click on a customer. And this is one of our demo environments here that we like to demo and showcase different things of Nerdio within. That being said, we're going to start with the auto-scaling, and I want to particularly focus on AVD to begin. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and expand AVD, go to our host pools. And if you've got existing AVD host pools, maybe you've got an existing AVD deployment that is just native in Azure, and you want to use Nerdio to kind of take over that particular instance or deployment, it's super easy to do with Nerdio, right? You just simply will plug Nerdio into that existing deployment, and we can discover all the host pools and give you the enhanced functionality of Nerdio that we're going to go through here, amongst many other different things that we won't quite get to today. That being said, we have a few host pools here in play. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of these host pools, and I'm going to hit this drop down. I'm going to go to auto scale and then configure. And so it's going to open up this new screen, new menu entirely. And what I want to do today is I'm not going to necessarily call out every single button that you can see here, but I'm going to really try to pick out the features that I think are going to be most impactful with the short amount of time that we have to work with today. So one thing I want to say is, if auto scale is not turned on, you will see that right here in the upper right-hand side. In order for auto scale to actually work, based on the settings that we're going to set below, you have to make sure you enable or turn it on, and then go to the bottom and hit save. So that's super important. Make sure that you have it flipped on, and then you go and save that. Wanted to call that out to begin with. But at a high level, what is auto scaling, right? And that is the ability to go ahead and have Nerdio dynamically make decisions for your AVD host pools and go ahead and turn host on, turn host off based on actual real-time usage. And it's very different from, let's say, a native Azure scaling set, because the scaling sets are primarily driven based on a schedule, right? So you specify, okay, at this time of day, I want this percentage of hosts on. At this time of day, I want this percentage of hosts off. And it's very rigid, right? It doesn't give you the ability to dynamically adjust as time goes on and as demand changes over time, right? You could be setting those schedules 6 months ago, but your client has evolved and changed in those 6 months to give a very different requirement to you. Now, with that being said, I'm just going to call out a couple settings, right? So the first one I want to mention is the name prefix. So what this is really going to dictate is when Nerdio goes and provisions a new host from a desktop image into a host pool, you can go ahead and set what you want that prefix to be in the computer name. So you have the ability to choose either just a generic prefix, which is going to go and set a bunch of random characters after this initial, let's say, denotation, or you can do a pattern where you can set an initial denotation, and then you can now have the ability to put numbers, characters, whatever the case may be, you can go and specify that here in the following steps. And anything here in Nerdio that you're unsure as to like what that means, or you need a deeper explanation on it, go ahead and click that information icon to the right of that box, and it's going to explain everything to you, right? And so going to detail out what a prefix means, what a pattern means, and how to actually go and set that so that Nerdio goes and does its thing on your behalf. Okay. Next thing I'm going to touch on is your desktop image template. So if you're using desktop imaging, which I highly recommend for most cases to use a desktop image, you're going to see that desktop image here within Nerdio. So if you hit this drop down, you'll go ahead and see the desktop image that perhaps you would like to use. Go ahead and click that image, and that will be your source of truth that Nerdio will use to go and build your AVD session hosts off of. You then have the ability to choose your VM size template. So what we're going to do here is, most cases, my partners, are many times engaging with me and my team. We will go and we'll build out a cost estimate within the Nerdio Manager for MSP platform. And we'll really talk through what type of machine should we be using here, right? Should we use an E series, which is a memory optimized type machine, or a D series, which is going to be more standard CPU to memory ratio type machine? We'll talk through what VM series and what machine, that should be used. And this is what you're going to use to kind of specify what type of machine you're going to deploy in your host pool. And so, a lot of times I'm seeing something like an E8 ASV5, which is a really nice machine, that I see most times anywhere from 6 to 12 full desktop users can fit on rather comfortably depending on their workloads. And so that E8 machine, 8 core, 64 gigs of RAM, this is what we're going to use in this case to go and deploy into our host pool. We would then choose something like a premium SSD, a P10 disk, 128 gigs. Cool thing is you're getting kind of the real-time pricing for your region. Nerdio's calling that out to you as you're putting in and making your selections. And then I want to mention this one really, really awesome feature about Nerdio that you just won't get anywhere else, which is the stopped OS disk type. So consider with me for a moment. What if you have an AVD deployment of 10, 20, 30, potentially, that many hosts in a pool, right? Maybe you got 15 E8 machines at, think of it, at 3 cents an hour for that disk, that's going to run 24/7. You're always going to pay for that disk. Well, if you're turning your machine off outside of normal business hours, which is really where this auto-scaling picture kind of comes into play anyways, is when you're not using these session hosts, that Nerdio is going to go and turn those machines off for you based on the logic we're going to set below. But the same thing can kind of apply to your operating system disk. So for instance, we can take that premium SSD, which you want in production when that machine is on, and we can go ahead and turn that machine off and then flip the disk to a standard HDD. We're not necessarily moving data, to my knowledge. We're just simply retagging it in Azure so that you pay, let's say, a penny per hour for every session host that's turned off outside of business hours. And so those savings may not seem like a lot at first, but at scale, those savings will absolutely add up and would be something that's really worth taking a look at when you have a decent amount of session hosts in a pool. All right. Ashley, anything worth calling out here in the first section that we've gone through?
Oh, I think you covered all of the main things that I would want to cover if I was showing this off. Yeah.
All right, great. Just wanted to check in on that one quick. So I'll move down a bit, and I want to show you how now we have the ability to go ahead and set up this default schedule, right? And really how we're going to tell Nerdio to go and size out the AVD host pool itself. So one thing you can do is you can say, let's say, I'm just going to give an example scenario. Let's say we have a 30 user virtual desktop deployment. You have 30 user customer that you're going to move into AVD, or you have an AVD already, but we want to apply auto scaling to that particular customer. Well, what we're doing here in this first, line here in the base host pool capacity is we're telling Nerdio how many hosts do we want provisioned off of our image, ready, accessible in our pool, right? How many do we want to build off of our image? And I would say maybe we'd want 3 to 4 E8 machines. Let's say it's a standard workload type customer. Maybe we want 4 of those E8s ready to go. So Nerdio will go and we'll build 4 of those hosts. But this next option is going to tell us, well, how many do we want at a minimum active at all times? Meaning, how many do we want turned on 24/7. And so in this case, maybe this customer tends to work a typical work week, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and doesn't really do much after hours. So in that case, if that's your customer's workload, maybe what you want to do is you want to consider talking to your customer about the optimal amount of cost savings would be to drop your 4 hosts all the way down to 0 if they don't intend to access the AVD, let's say, much after hours. And what you can do is, as this message is calling out, we can make sure that we check off this box to start VM on Connect, which means that if someone by chance does sign in Friday night at 9 p.m. when all the machines are turned off, Nerdio can go and turn or use Azure to turn on that machine. And it usually takes about 3 minutes or so to boot up that session host to accommodate that user who's signing in after hours. So I would say it's a real big conversation point that you want to have with your customer. If for some reason they're like, I don't know if I want to go all the way down to 0, I want to make sure that I can accommodate maybe up to 8 to 10 users after hours concurrently if they need to. So I'm going to keep one host online at all times, right? And so that's essentially what you're calling out here with this minimum active host capacity. The last thing that you can do is you can say, I want Nerdio to be able to burst beyond my base capacity of 4 hosts up to X amount of additional hosts in the pool. And really what this is doing is it's saying, hey, I don't necessarily want to babysit whether or not my customer is adding, a dozen users, let's say, without me knowing about it or watching it. So what if they did jump up from 30 to 40 users without me really realizing it? Well, maybe at that point, these 4 session hosts are going to kind of be, overextended. And we want to have Nerdio get ahead of that issue. And so in that case, maybe we want to give Nerdio the ability to burst beyond base capacity up to an additional host and add it into the pool if some logic below is met. And so that's giving Nerdio the autonomy to add a 5th host into the pool if we deem it necessary. And we'll talk some more about that in a second. So moving on to our scaling logic, that's our sizing. Talking about our scaling logic, first thing we want to set is what is our session limit per host, meaning how many sessions do we want to allow at max per Azure Virtual Desktop host, session host. And so I would say, let's say, okay, we have eight sessions that we want to have per host. And what Nerdio is doing is we're taking a calculation here. We're saying, okay, based on the 4 machines, that would give us 32 available sessions that we can accommodate. Oh, but we also have this burst beyond capacity, right? So that's going to give us the ability to handle up to 40 concurrent AVD sessions for this host pool. Hopefully that's making sense. Then, just in essence of time, I'm going to skip through some of these breadth first, depth first again, meaning do you want to put all your users down in a depth first, or do you want to spread them across hosts in a breadth first method there? But we have several triggers built into our scaling logic that's worth calling out. So we have our auto scale trigger, and there's several here. I would say one of the most common that I see is going to be user driven, which is basically based on the amount of users signed into your AVD hosts. How do we want to go and scale up or scale down accordingly? So for instance, when all the users have logged off, Nerdio will go and scale in those hosts after 10 minutes that no one new has signed in, let's say. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? But we then will say when available sessions drops below a certain amount, meaning that let's say your 32 available sessions of your 4 hosts altogether, maybe when that drops below 2 available sessions, then you can go and tell Nerdio, hey, we need to spin up that 5th host so that we don't reach our limit here. Go, Nerdio, build a new host, add it to the pool based on your desktop image so that it's ready to go to accommodate some additional sessions that may or may not come through. So that's user-driven. You also have the ability to choose other metrics, things like CPU or RAM usage. So for instance, you can tell Nerdio, add an additional host to the pool if your CPU utilization across all of your hosts exceeds a certain percentage for a set amount of time, right? And so that's saying, hey, based on your actual resource consumption on these hosts, we're going to need another boat, right, so to speak. We're going to need, a bigger boat. We're going to need more session hosts in the pool to accommodate the load that's happening here. And then you can say, well, once that resource constraint has dropped a bit, go ahead and turn off your hosts if your utilization across all of them drops below a certain threshold for a set period of time. And again, I would say, as some advice to the MSPs here who are in attendance, like, there's no silver bullet to every single customer that's out there, right? I think that kind of goes without saying. You're going to have healthcare who's going to have a certain set of needs. You're going to have, let's say an attorney, law office who's going to have another set of needs. So it really is going to be, there's no cookie cutter approach per se. It's going to be a little bit of, listening to your customers' needs, talking to them about, their usage and their use case, and then really tailoring the solution. But the good news is that Nerdio gives you a ton of different triggers to kind of accommodate whatever those needs may be. And again, in the effort of time, I'm not going to necessarily call all of them out today, but we have KB articles linked in your in your view there that you can go and check out the KB for auto scale settings for AVD if you want some more info on some of these triggers here. And then the one thing I would also say is if you ever need to run anything by a member of our team, maybe you're kind of stuck on something, you've tried a couple of different things and it's not really met the need 100%, go ahead and grab time with one of us, right? We'll pull in a sales engineer, we'll get you the resource who can talk through some of that. We'd love to spend some time with you going through that with you. So we talked about triggers. There's another section here that's worth calling out, which is scale-in restrictions. And really what this is saying is, hey, based on this customer's needs, maybe we don't want to turn any of our 4 hosts off between the hours of, and you can go and specify what they may be, right? So you could say between the hours of, let's say, so sorry, that's kind of the inverse, right? We want to be able to scale in hosts between these hours here. So for instance, maybe from 2 p.m. to 6 a.m., we are okay with Nerdio turning off hosts during those off-peak hours, right? So think about it. Maybe people start to work a half day. Maybe you have people who are in the field. Maybe people are on an executive lunch, right? An extended lunch break, something like that. So we're kind of okay with Nerdio starting to scale in some of those resources to start to save some money during these hours. You can go and specify that. Now, the potential drawback to that is that if you do specify these hours here, what you're going to do is you're going to potentially hurt yourself in the event of a holiday, kind of like what we had in the US last week with the Independence Day holiday. Nerdio wouldn't turn off these hosts if we set it this way until 2 p.m. If we were pre-staging them to turn on at a certain time, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So you have to kind of think through some of these things, start to, in your mind, think through how you want this to work. What are the pros? What are the cons? And weigh those out for your particular customer's need. Again, you can also say, I don't ever want to restrict scale in. I want to be able to scale in at any time. And therefore, during the holiday, let's say people are just out of the office for some reason, you're going to allow Nerdio to scale those in earlier in the day than you would otherwise with the restrictions there. There's also some scale and aggressiveness that can be specified. Again, we kind of call that out in the information icon here. High scale and aggressiveness is something I would perhaps be a little bit more cautious about doing. I would make sure those conversations are had with my customer ahead of time, because what this will do is it'll first look to scale in hosts. And when I say scale in, I mean essentially deallocate, turn off those AVD hosts. Don't allow anyone to sign into them because they're turned off. Without any sessions, and scale those in, right? We'll start with those that don't have sessions, and that makes sense. But then after only hosts with sessions remain, those are the smallest number of active sessions will be scaled in first after notifying users and waiting per the configuration below. So kind of the risk you're running there is, yes, you will be optimal cost-saving mechanism because you'll start to, let's say there's only 2 users on a session host, you're going to basically kick them out and say, you got to re-sign in. We're going to put you on another host with more people who are on it. So we're being more judicious and careful with our spend. But again, it's not the best user experience. So you have to kind of weigh that out and have that conversation with your customer and figure out the best way to go about that. So we have high, medium, low, all sorts of different explanations, I would say, for how to accommodate that scale and aggressiveness, which again, for the sake of this webinar, I'm not going to go into just yet. Okay, rolling drain mode. I kind of teased it at the beginning here, but this is a newer feature that just came out the last few months, which I think is really, really awesome. So what it can do is it can set you up in a better position to be able to scale in those hosts as the day gets goes on, so that you can have more ability to again really put where your user sessions are going, and to not allow user sessions to be spread across, right? To where you have 2 users here, 2 users there, 4 users here, and maybe 5 users on another. Well, in that case, you might as well just scale down to 2 session hosts towards the end of the day and try and put all those sessions onto just the 2 instead of spreading them across all 4. Since you're paying for all 4, you'd rather spread them maybe a bit tighter to just a smaller amount of hosts as the day goes on. And so that being said, maybe what you want to do is you want to say, hey, as the day moves forward here, maybe starting at 1 p.m., I want to put, I don't know, 50% of my hosts, or 2 out of the 4 in this case, I want to put them in drain mode, which means they're not going to accept any new AVD connections. Everyone that's been signed into them will remain signed into them through however long they need, but I'm not going to accept any new connections on 2 out of these 4 hosts. So I can set myself up really nicely towards the end of the day to start scaling in those resources as people sign out towards the end of the day. So it gives you a lot more flexibility to set yourself up nicely for scale-in processes in your host pool. Last couple things I want to call out is the ability to pre-stage your hosts. So this is basically saying, for this customer, Monday through Friday, I want to flip my host to the running OS disk type when I'm going to go and turn on this machine, let's say, or these machines at 7 a.m. when they want to have these ready. And I want to make sure I have all 4 hosts ready by the start of the workday, right? I don't want to wait until performance is starting to lag or people are starting to complain to then go and turn on session hosts 2, 3, and 4. I just want to make sure they're all ready to go. And then if I need to scale them in, I certainly can as the day goes on. And so that being said, 7 a.m. Monday through Friday, I'm going to flip the disk from the standard HDD, which is inexpensive, to the premium SSD for performance. When these machines are turned on, I'm going to turn on all 4. And then what I want to do is I want to set this scale in delay, which basically means that if I had no restrictions above, what I am going to do is I'm going to make sure that these hosts stay on at least for the first 2.5 hours of this day. But then again, maybe a holiday, or maybe there's a light work day, or people are off for vacation. Well, maybe we don't need all 4. So after the first 2.5 hours of that day, Nerdio is going to go and say, all right, based on my logic, can I start to scale in some resources? And I think that gives you a lot of ability to save on some costs if you do it this way. Notifications are available here in case something goes wrong. And then here's your messaging that if you do need to send a warning message before scaling in, you can go and specify exactly what you want up in that banner window at the top of their screen when they're in AVD. And then there's the final piece here just worth mentioning, which is auto healing, which gives you the ability to fix problems before maybe you or your customer even realize they're happening. So for instance, any of these AVD agent statuses that could come up, right? Maybe AVD agent showing as unavailable or disconnected or lost its heartbeat or its domain trust has been lost. If any of those things happen and there's no active sessions, maybe I want to try to reboot that host a couple times, try and fix that issue with a reboot, wait 10 minutes between those restarts. Maybe I even want to try and run some scripts, maybe have a repair script of some sort that is a common fix for this type of issue that you want to go and run. Go ahead and do that from Nerdio. However, if all else fails, I want to go and remove that host from the pool that's not working essentially, and I want to recreate it from my image, right? So Nerdio can go and fix that problem before it even stays present in your environment. So that is everything I wanted to cover for the AVD host pool auto scaling. Ashley, anything worth calling out here before I move to Azure Files Auto-Scaling?
No, I think you hit it all, Frank. Yeah, very, very informational. You broke down a lot of things in this short amount of time.
Perfect. Awesome. So I'm going to keep moving in the effort of keeping time. And so next thing I want to talk about is Azure Files Auto-Scaling. So this is something when I talk to partners, I would say there's maybe too often for my liking, partners aren't aware of they may understand the AVD auto-scaling, but maybe don't understand the value of the Azure Files auto-scaling as well. And at a high level, really what it is it gives you the ability to have Nerdio dynamically add or remove disk space from your Azure file shares in Azure, and you have the ability to have Nerdio watch that for you instead of you doing it, right? And so, as maybe many of you know, Azure Files Premium bills you based on your actual provision space, not on your consumed amount of space. And so, for instance, what I've noticed is a lot of MSPs, they will over provision that Azure file share because they're afraid of running out of space, and understandably so. But the problem with that is you end up paying a lot more money than you should be because you're paying for provision space rather than use space with Azure Files Premium. And so we've really sought out to fix that problem of the overpaying side of that by setting up auto-scaling for your Azure files. And so, for instance, if I go and hit the dropdown of any one of these Azure file shares, and I go to auto-scale and configure, again, make sure we turn this on, toggle this on. But what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, here is your used capacity. And in this case, it's only 0 gigs for this Azure Files Premium share. But let's say it were 100 gigs or 200 gigs. That would show here. And then if we're going to do a percentage free, we can always make sure that there is 10% free at all times. No matter what the actual in-use data is, it can grow, it can shrink. Nerdio is going to basically grow and shrink, but plus a 10% buffer for you in this case. So in this case, there's a 100 gig minimum to Azure Files, which is why it's doing the 100 here. But if this were above that, right? If this were, let's say, 90 gigs or 95 gigs, Nerdio is going to basically provision 105, right? To give you, roughly 105 gigs to give you that extra 10% of buffer. So that's what you're basically saying here is I want a 10% buffer, or I want an extra 50 gigs at all times. So you can do it based off of absolute gigs or a relative percentage, as you just saw. I would say, to be honest with you, that is really the net of the most important part that you will come in here for. Of course, you can set a max size, right? So don't grow more than 100%, of the share. You can set some of these things here. But one other thing I wanted to call out is not only is the scaling coming into play for actual size, but it's coming into play based on performance as well. So if you've got a very large Azure file share, well, what you probably know is that your performance increases. You get better, better disk IOs and better performance as your Azure file share increases in size. And so what you could do is, if you're kind of noticing a bit of performance issue, you can do the scheduled quota increase. And so what you could basically say is, during the week, I want to add additional disk space, not because I need the space, but because I want the performance out of that additional space, right? And so you could tell Nerdio Monday through Friday, add this amount of percentage, of space, because I want to get that better performance back from Azure. And then you can decrease it back after that scheduled increase. All right, that is mostly everything I wanted to cover here for Azure Files Auto-Scaling. Ashley, again, anything you think I missed or anything worth calling out?
No, not on those, but I think the audience is super excited to see some UAM stuff. There's some chat happening about that. So, yeah.
All right. Let me get to it then. So UAM, we mentioned the relatively new feature here in Nerdio. At a high level, applications management is really taking the existing winget functionality that's baked into PowerShell at this point in any modern Windows 10, Windows 11, operating system. And winget, for those who may not be familiar, I wasn't as of several months ago. I hadn't really worked with it much. But winget is the ability to open up a PowerShell and essentially get your third-party applications installed, updated, removed, really via command, right? And the cool thing is that Microsoft has a Windows Package Manager community whereby they're working with Microsoft MVPs and these third-party software vendors to upload and maintain the installers for these applications. And so it's super powerful, but the problem is it's been siloed out on a device-by-device level until we recognized this and said, hey, let's build a GUI for this and give our MSPs the ability to go and target their Intune devices or their AVD host pools or their desktop images or even their servers that are up in Azure, to be able to touch all of those using Winget to go and push out these applications and their updates. And so what you can do is everyone should have access to the unified catalog in their own NMM. And what you can do is you can essentially search for any application that's in any of these repositories, like the Windows Package Manager community, the Microsoft Store. You can set your own private repositories, shell apps now, as well as the Package Manager community, right? And so this is querying all of those repos. And it's going to say, okay, anything with Adobe is going to come back with a hit. And what I could do is I could favorite that app so it always shows kind of in that main screen. I don't have to go searching for it. I then can go and look at the properties of this application. You can see the different versions that Adobe's put out here. See the licensing, all sorts of cool stuff I can kind of see right from here and say, all right, yeah, this is the one. This is from Adobe. This is what I need. I'm going to now go and assign this to all my customers. And what you're doing here is you're just saying this application is now going to be accessible in their tenant, right? To where you can go and build a deployment policy from. So once I've done that, hit save, right? Apply and close. I'm going to now go to an account. And what I want to do is I want to go to the application section. I'm going to go to the unified catalog. And now I'm going to find all those apps that I've assigned from that top MSP level. And now I'm here in the customer level or the account layer. And now I'm going to create a deployment policy. So if I wanted to deploy, let's say, multiple apps, I can do it, with a multi-select and then come down here and deploy selected. Or I can just choose one at a time here, deploy my 8x8 work app. And now I'm going to choose my targets. So for instance, you can target servers. You can target AVD host pools, AVD desktops. You can also target two other things that don't show here, and I'll tell you why, is you can target a desktop image. And I'll show you in a second kind of what that looks like. That one's really, really great. And I'll explain why that is. But you can go ahead and say, all right, I want to push out this 8x8 work app to my demo host pool here. And I even want to package in some other applications. So you can do it this way as well. And maybe you have a specific version of the app that you want to stay on until you come back in here and manually change that. You can go ahead and do that as well. Or Nerdio is going to go and anytime a new version comes out, we're going to go and push that version down to that host pool as you've specified here. So you kind of next through the wizard here, set up a couple more parameters if needed, hit save and close, and Nerdio has now created a deployment policy for you. And you can go and check on your deployment policies as you see fit here. And then you can also check on your deployment status, right? So giving you the status of, okay, have we been successful in pushing out these apps? Are there any issues, right? What's the problem? How can we go and resolve that? And give you that real-time information as to whether or not we've been successful or not in that. I did just want to show you, so if you did, in this tenant, we don't have Intune for this tenant, so I just kind of wanted to show you quick. If I go to a tenant with Intune enabled for Nerdio, I can do the same process, choose to deploy, go to my targets, and now I can see that Intune is a target, and I can choose a device group, right? So I can say, all right, my QA team needs to have these set of apps automatically deployed and pushed out to their Intune joined devices. I don't have to go and manually install them. I don't even necessarily need to even put them on my image. I can go and use Unified App Management to not just deploy them initially, but to keep them updated as time goes on. So huge, huge value there. And then the last piece worth mentioning is talking about the image portion of this. So if I go back into an account and I go to my desktop images section, well, maybe what I want to do is I want to, set up a maintenance window schedule on one of these images to where I go and I just push out those third-party updates, let's say. So if I hit power on and I turn this image on, let's say once a week, every Wednesday at 12 a.m., well, now you'll notice there's a new option here in addition to the scripted actions. You can also choose to enable applications management and pick your apps and choose the latest. So now Nerdio is going to go and look at Winget and say, okay, when I turn this machine on, this image, every week, I'm going to go and make sure that all these apps are going to pull from the latest that's in the Winget repository. And that, to me, takes away so much manual work on making sure these third-party apps are updated. You can just basically set it and forget it here, and Nerdio is going to go and update these apps for you. Again, schedule your power off after a set period of time. Maybe you want a 3-hour maintenance window where Nerdio can go and update these apps. Ashley, questions, thoughts, anything worth mentioning here?
Just one thing. What if, how do you manage apps? Like, what if they're not in that unified catalog list? What can you
Yep.
do then?
Yeah, great call out. So with that, you can, as I teased about but didn't get into great detail, is you can have a private MSP repository. So meaning that if something is not in the the general Microsoft Windows Package Manager community, you can go, or in the iOS store, I should say, in the Play Store soon here, or the Microsoft Store. If none of your apps are there, well, what you have the ability to do is come back to the MSP layer, go to the unified catalog, choose to import application. And now you can basically say, all right, I want to essentially upload a third-party app into my own private repository. That's going to be WinGettable, if I could say it that way, right? So we're going to be able to use the same underlying technology with WinGet to pull from your private repository. And so essentially you can fill out all this information here about your particular application. You can then go and upload an MSI, EXE, right? MSIX, zip file, whatever it is, go and upload that installer, or even pop in a URL, depending on which type of install you want to do. Again, just fill out all of these different pieces of the install switches if necessary, use apps and features if you'd like to do that or need to do that. You can tag it, right? So if you want to start classifying your apps based on the type of application it is, you can go and tag it within NMM here. And then also do some detection rules, right, to make sure it's not already there. You can go and check for that. So yeah, you can have that same functionality if you just simply import your own apps into your private repository.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that answered, I think, a couple of questions that were in the Q&A, actually, Frank. So thank you for showing that.
Love to hear it. Yeah, great questions, guys. Last thing on the show, again, in the effort of time here, appreciate everyone sticking around and staying with us for this one. I think the participation's been amazing, so appreciate you all. Last thing I'll call out is the server management. And if you're not aware, Nerdio can help you to manage your infrastructure as a service VMs within NMM. And maybe you kind of say, oh yeah, I knew that. It's I kind of, for my AVD customers, I have my VMs there, my domain controller, my file server, my app server, whatever it may be. And I think that's great, right? But as I think about it some more, if you've got just IaaS in general out there that you are managing in Azure, maybe they don't have AVD for any particular reason, maybe they're just Azure VMs sitting up in the cloud. Well, in my opinion, right, my humble opinion, I'll say, why not put them into the same pane of glass that you have your AVD and your Intune potentially with Nerdio, right? Why not put all of your servers so that your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 techs, whatever it is, can all go to the same place and manage those VMs as well, right? They don't need to now sign into the Azure portal to resize a disk, let's say. They can come right here into Nerdio and do that. They can come and create new VMs right here from Nerdio. So all those things you can do, and we're just talking about server management. But for those IaaS-only customers, you can manage your Azure backup right through Nerdio, your virtual networks, your VPNs, all sorts of great stuff there. You can even do, which we talked about in a previous webinar, user management, right? Your Entra ID users can be managed for those infrastructure-only customers, and come and talk to us on the CSM team about what the costs associated might even be. But I would say it's a great use for most partners that I'm working with to put all their eggs in that basket so that you can kind of simplify the management and have that single pane of glass type of experience, even for your IaaS only. That being said, you'd see all your VMs showing right here. Again, green means powered off. Green means powered on. Red means powered off. And you have the ability to kind of start the VM. You can basically set a schedule for starting it, right? If you wanted to do that, I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. You can go ahead and generate almost like a break glass type of scenario. If you needed to get in, let's say with a one-time RDP access, you can go and specify, what your public IP is if it's not auto-discovered. And you can just give a short period of time if you're not using like an Azure firewall or a third-party firewall in that tenant. we can essentially poke a hole in the NSG temporarily to give you access to straight RDP over to that, only from that IP that you're coming in from. You also can do things like add a disk, resize the VM, which just is as simple as picking your new VM SKU and then allowing Nerdio to reboot that machine, and it comes up with the new resources that you've selected. You can even manage its internal IP. So, is it a DHCP or does it need a static IP on that particular subnet? All that I think is super helpful. You can actually set up some auto scaling. So it's not like as dynamic as AVD, but I think there's some real solid work use cases that you can perhaps do and use here by enabling this. And so the cool thing is you can say, all right, I want to turn this machine on Monday through Friday, but then I just want to simply have it turn off on a schedule, right? And I think that's pretty cool. But the other cool thing that I like is maybe instead of powering the machine off, maybe you want to change its size. So maybe it's a B2MS, 2-core 8 gig, and it's just doing domain controller. But maybe outside of business hours, Saturday and Sunday, shrink it down to a B2S, right? A 2-core 4 gig. Spend a little less money on that machine during the weekend hours. It's still running, but it's just running a little bit less a little bit leaner, costing you a little bit less. So switching disks you can also do, and then running scripted actions when a server is resized, started, or stopped, giving you nice flexibility there. Last thing I'll show you is if you need to resize a disk, you can also do that. So let's say an OS disk or a data disk, perhaps you can go ahead and maybe need to throw provision more space for it, throw a little more gigs at it. You can go and do that. And one cool thing is you don't even necessarily need to go into disk management. Nerdio can go and grow that Windows volume, as well as increasing the hard disk size from Azure. So we're going to, essentially extend that partition, if you will. All right. I think saving us a couple minutes at the end here. Again, creating a server. We can talk through some of that if you have questions around that. But in the essence of saving some time for Q&A, I am going to wrap up my lengthy screen share session here. Ashley, appreciate everyone sticking around for it. Hopefully it was a huge, huge help to everyone to see some of that up close and personal.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Frank. So we do have a few questions, and guys, we only have 5 minutes to answer questions. So if we don't get to those, we will follow back up via email with you all. So give me 1 second. Before we get to questions, let me just tell you about a few additional resources we have. I do have to plug my next webinar. It is tomorrow. So Frank went through some things that are already in Nerdio Manager for MSP and have been there for a while. We're going to highlight brand new features that we just launched in Nerdio Manager for MSP. So make sure you register for that. Also, some training camps we have. Training camps are awesome. It's 2 jam-packed days full of information. There's a sales day and a technical day. So let's get into the questions a little bit. If I have a reservation on a server in Azure, what happens when I auto scale it down to a smaller machine?
Yeah, so if you have a reservation, this is a good question, right? Is if you have a reservation, I would certainly suggest not doing the auto scaling, because at that point you're already paying a fixed amount, right, for that particular VM. So there's no sense in turning it off. There's also no sense in resizing it, because if you do that, not only are you going to pay for that reservation that you've committed to, but you're also going to pay for that alternate size when it's running. So it actually, you'd be doing the opposite effect for anything with the reservation. So great question, great call out there. So really, you'd want to kind of maybe work with our team to do the math on, does it make sense for that server management resizing? Does it make sense? Are we saving enough money to not do a reservation on it if it needs to be on 24/7? And it's kind of the same goes for AVD, right? We can talk through some of those scenarios. But yeah, keep in mind reservations when you're resizing machines. Always have that in mind. Great call out.
Awesome. How can Nerdio Manager ensure that we have the latest version of Windows? I think this is the UAM part.
Yeah, so the latest version of, I'm assuming like Windows 10, Windows 11, like Windows updates. I'm going to guess that's what that question might be in reference to.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would say is the biggest thing is to make sure that you are either using your RMM or our Windows Update script that we have pre-built into Nerdio Manager for MSP. And what I see most of the time is I will have that script running on my desktop image on a weekly or monthly cadence. So similar to what I showed on the schedule for powering on your desktop image, during that same schedule that you're setting, make sure you hit that drop down for the Windows scripts. And I would find the update Windows 10 or update Windows 11, whatever's applicable there. Or I would go ahead and run your RMM to go and run those Windows updates to the image itself or to the host itself.
Awesome. Let me find. Okay, if a maintenance window is not yet set, will the updated application be installed as soon as it hits the repository?
So to my knowledge, the answer is yes. I can validate that though. But I would say as a rule of thumb, I would probably say yes to that question, just to be safe.
Awesome. Does the 15-minute application check only happen if a maintenance window is not set?
Also, I want to say the answer to that is going to be yes. And I think, again, this is in reference to unified app management.
Yeah.
So that's been my experience. So hopefully that helps answer that question.
Awesome. How can you patch apps that were installed directly on an image?
Okay. So I think maybe some of the question here is if we already installed, let's see, like for instance, if you have already installed like Adobe on an image, and then you want to go and use Winget or Unified App Management to patch it ongoing. The cool thing is you can, right? You can overlay. So what Winget does is it actually will query your machine to find any Wingettable apps. And it will say, okay, you need an update for this, or you have the latest version of this, right? Or you can uninstall via Winget using, here for this app. So Winget is pretty in tune, I would say, with what's on a machine, and kind of does a good job of handling that duplication type issue that could occur.
Awesome. Does the Windows Update script complete feature updates?
Can you just repeat that one for me, Ashley?
Yeah, does the Windows Update script complete feature updates?
I would have to check. I think that's a great question. I'd have to dig into the script itself, but maybe follow up with our team, right? Reach out to your customer success manager. We can grab a moment or even just trade emails on it. I would highly encourage you to do that. I just don't know off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. I'd have to dig into the script and take a peek at what we have in our generic Windows Update script.
Okay, and I'm so sorry, guys. I think that is all the time we have for questions. If you guys could let us know what feature you are most excited to leverage and use. And the questions that we did not get to, I promise somebody will follow up with you via email. I promise. But if you could just answer the poll if possible. I think UAM is the favorite of the day.
Yeah.
We had tons of questions about that. And
yeah,
I also wanted to, yeah, awesome. All right, yeah, so unified app management, like I thought. And another point, I know we're at the top of the hour, that I did want to mention is that our CEO, Vadim, actually did an in-depth webinar on UAM a couple of months ago, and that video can be found in that partnered portal. So if you don't know if you have access to that portal, reach out to your Nerdio contact and they can get you access to it. All righty. Thank you guys so much for your time. It was super great, super informative, and I hope that you will join us on the next one, episode 4. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Keep your eyes peeled for an email. Episode 4 is going to be awesome, just like episode 3, 2, and 1 were. So have a great rest of your day, guys.
Take care, everybody.